December 11, 2025, silver prices have reportedly surged to around $63 per ounce, levels we haven't seen in modern trading history. We're talking about what analysts describe as roughly a 113% climb in just 12 months. But here's my analysis of why this spike is fundamentally different from typical commodity rallies. This appears to be strategic positioning, not just market forces. And when I studied historical patterns, I found three eerily similar situations. In each case, the dominant economic power faced serious decline every single time. Let me walk you through what I believe China did on October 30th, why I think this matters to your daily life, and three critical developments you should understand before January 1st. That's just 3 weeks away. I'm not a financial advisor, this isn't financial advice, and I'm not affiliated with anyone mentioned in this video. This is purely educational analysis based on publicly available information. So, here's what reportedly went down late October 2025. According to multiple trade reports, China's Ministry of Commerce announced new export control measures on silver. Starting January 1st, sources indicate that silver exports will require government approval. We're talking about export quotas, licensing requirements, and what they're calling national security reviews. My interpretation: China now holds significant leverage over global silver distribution. Market response was immediate and dramatic. Reports suggest Shanghai silver inventories dropped approximately 40% within 3 weeks. Physical silver premiums in mainland China have reportedly skyrocketed. Some sources indicate Chinese buyers are paying anywhere from $108 to $128 per ounce for actual physical metal. That's roughly double the global spot price. In my view, this signals they're anticipating major supply constraints. Meanwhile, Western mints are reporting sellouts. London Metal Exchange inventories have reportedly hit multi-year lows. Major institutional players are demanding physical delivery instead of paper contracts. We're talking about orders worth approximately 350 million ounces. That's more than what many analysts estimate as the entire annual global surplus. Now, here's why this matters to you personally, even if you've never invested in precious metals. Your smartphone contains roughly 5 grams of silver. Electric vehicles. Industry estimates suggest between 25 and 50 grams per vehicle. Solar panels use approximately 20 grams each, and here's the kicker. AI data centers powering tools like ChatGPT are among the biggest silver consumers in tech history. Each server reportedly uses specialized silver-coated components for heat management and high-speed connectivity. Some industry forecasts suggest the AI boom alone could consume around 200 million ounces of silver by 2030. Defense applications are equally critical. Missiles, radar systems, guidance computers. Reports indicate that U.S. military consumed approximately 15 million ounces in 2024. Here's the concerning part. The United States apparently produces only about 14% of its domestic silver supply, just 14%, the rest imported. And here's what many people don't realize: China doesn't mine the most silver. They produce roughly 6% of global mine output according to available data. But China dominates the refining process. They process raw silver from other countries, convert it into high-purity industrial-grade material, then distribute it globally. Or at least they did until 3 weeks ago. Now, I know what you're thinking. China wouldn't actually restrict silver exports. That would hurt their own economy. This is just negotiation tactics. Let me share why I believe that's a miscalculation. Because when I researched this, I found this exact pattern has played out 3 times throughout history. Similar structure, similar progression, similar outcomes. And based on my analysis, we just entered stage 3. Here's the pattern I identified. 4 stages consistently. Stage 1 is dependency. A dominant nation builds critical infrastructure around a single commodity. Their factories depend on it. Their military requires it. They assume unlimited access. Stage 2 is weaponization. The supplier realizes they're holding strategic leverage. They begin restricting exports gradually, testing responses, creating scarcity, while citing administrative delays. Stage 3 is crisis. Prices surge. Industries slow production. The dependent nation scrambles for alternatives, but the timeline is too compressed. Supply chains are already disrupted. Stage 4 is realignment. Industrial dominance erodes. Currency weakens. Military advantages diminish. A new global order emerges. Let me give you one historical example that mirrors what I see happening now. Around 1870, Britain controlled an estimated 60% of global manufacturing. The Royal Navy dominated maritime trade, but they were heavily dependent on German steel imports. For decades, the system worked smoothly. Germany supplied raw materials. Britain manufactured the machines, ships, and weapons. Then around 1890, Germany reportedly started creating delays in shipments. Not officially, that would have been an act of war. Just bureaucratic complications, extended quality inspections. British factories experienced slowdowns. Shipyards missed delivery deadlines. Steel prices reportedly tripled by 1900. Britain attempted to develop domestic steel capacity, but they were already behind schedule. The infrastructure development took years. The costs were enormous. 1914, World War I began. Germany's steel advantage translated into military capability. They reportedly outproduced Britain in artillery, machine guns, and submarines. Britain survived, but they never fully recovered their industrial dominance. By 1945, the United States had emerged as the new global superpower. Same pattern, different resource, and the entire transition took less than 50 years. Here's what fascinates me. China learned this lesson through direct experience. Around 1800, China was the world's largest economy. They produced everything Europe desired: silk, porcelain, tea. But China demanded payment exclusively in silver. By approximately 1830, China had reportedly absorbed roughly 50% of global silver production. This created a severe problem for Britain. Their silver reserves were depleting. Their economy was hemorrhaging wealth eastward. So Britain found an alternative solution: opium. They flooded China with opium from India, reversed the silver flow, turned China's surplus into deficit. When China attempted to stop it, Britain invaded. The Opium Wars, China lost. They were forced to open ports, cede Hong Kong, and accept European dominance for over a century. But here's my key observation: China never forgot that historical lesson. They're not repeating the same mistakes. 185 years later, they've positioned themselves on the opposite side of the equation. So, where do I believe we are right now? Stage 3, the crisis stage, and here's my supporting evidence. The United States government reportedly designated silver as a critical mineral in 2025. They recognize the strategic threat. Cumulative global silver deficits are estimated at around 800 million ounces, 5 consecutive years of shortages, according to industry analysts. Production reportedly can't keep pace with demand. Here's the structural issue. Approximately 70% of silver comes as a byproduct of other metal mining operations. You don't simply open a dedicated silver mine. You mine copper, lead, zinc, and silver comes as a secondary output, which means rapid production increases are structurally difficult. If copper demand drops, silver supply drops regardless of silver prices. The system has fundamental constraints. Reports indicate solar panel manufacturers are experiencing delays. Electric vehicle production is reportedly slowing. Chip makers are searching for alternatives. But here's the technical reality. Silver's electrical conductivity is the highest of any element. Its thermal conductivity is unmatched. You cannot effectively substitute it in high-performance applications. Not for military systems, not for AI infrastructure. The Pentagon understands this. Defense contractors understand this. Silicon Valley understands this. And I believe China understands that they understand. Industry analysts are forecasting potential shortfalls exceeding 200 million ounces in 2025, that is approximately 15% of annual demand. Simply and available, current price is around $62 per ounce. Deutsche Bank's public forecast suggests approximately $65 by end of 2026. Bank of America's analysts have similar projections. But here's what I'm hearing isn't being said publicly. If China maintains these restrictions, if deficits compound, some analysts are privately discussing $75 to $100 per ounce. Not in 10 years, within 18 months. So what happens next? In my analysis, there are only 3 realistic options. Option 1, the US pays whatever China demands. Prices surge, industries pass costs to consumers. Your smartphone becomes more expensive. Your electric vehicle costs more. Your electricity bill increases because silver is embedded in modern infrastructure. Option 2. The US sources silver elsewhere. They pressure Mexico, Peru, Canada, Australia. But these countries are reportedly already at maximum production capacity, and China can outbid them with an estimated $3 trillion in foreign reserves. Plus, China controls the refining infrastructure, raw silver, or requires processing. Option 3. The US builds domestic refining capacity. This is the only sustainable solution in my view, but it takes years, perhaps a decade. Permits, environmental reviews, construction, testing. By then, China has potentially locked in industrial advantages. Their AI infrastructure could be superior, their green energy grid more advanced, their electric vehicle fleet larger, and the United States is playing catch-up with higher input costs. Remember the historical pattern. Britain attempted to build steel capacity after depending on Germany. Too late. The US is attempting to secure silver after depending on China's refining network. History suggests the timeline is compressed. So, what should you do with this analysis? 3 specific recommendations. First, understand the timeline. China's export controls reportedly take full effect January 1st, 3 weeks from now. I expect prices could potentially hit $70 per ounce by March, possibly higher. If you're in industries dependent on silver, electronics, solar, automotive, consider factoring this into planning now, not later. Second, recognize the divergence happening. Physical silver and paper silver are splitting. Chinese buyers are reportedly already paying roughly double the paper price for actual metal. That gap represents a fundamental disconnect between futures contracts and physical reality. When that gap potentially closes in Western markets, and I believe it will, the price adjustment could be severe and sudden. Third, watch developments in the next 90 days. If China follows through with strict enforcement in January, if inventories continue declining, if more countries begin hoarding strategic reserves, that would confirm we're locked into stage 3. At that point, the window for easy solutions closes. Here's what I believe you need to understand. This isn't just about one commodity. In my analysis, China is testing whether the United States will respond decisively. If Washington does nothing on silver, I expect Beijing moves to the next critical mineral: rare earths, tungsten, antimony, cobalt. This appears to be a systematic campaign to control the supply chain of the 21st century economy. Silver might just be the opening move. China spent centuries watching the West control critical resources, watching Britain dominate steel, watching America dominate oil, watching the dollar dominate trade. Now they're potentially reversing the dynamic with silver, with rare earths, with everything that powers modern technology, and the United States appears to be reacting late. An estimated 800 million ounces missing. For historical stages, we're apparently in stage 3. The pattern seems clear. The timeline is established. The only question is whether you see it developing. In my next analysis, I'll break down exactly which industries I believe face disruption first, which companies might survive, and the specific moves institutional investors are reportedly making right now that aren't being discussed in mainstream media. Subscribe and turn on notifications. January 1st is 3 weeks away. The story is just